I love the story about the remnant. No matter what you do, there's going to be a remnant in society protecting the principles of liberty. And that's what we need to do. We need to build that.
Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more.
Let me correct what Sean Hannity just had to say.
Everybody's saving lives.
The Americans don't care about the Constitution. This is just boomer bullcrap that people spout on Fox News.
So you think the United States Constitution is boomer bullcrap? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying
Wow.
yeah, I'm saying
Interesting.
100%.
Wow.
If you looked at what happened,
Russian.
if you looked at what happened with the lockdowns, they did not have to use a lot of force. The overwhelming majority of people were more than happy to have their freedoms taken away for the illusion of safety. The average man does not want to be free. He merely wants to be safe. And the Constitution has been a dead letter from the George Washington administration. They were locking people up for criticizing the government in the 1790s. It's a complete joke.
And then one more area that I hope nation states start paying greater attention to is the rise of cryptocurrency. Because what looks like a very interesting and somewhat exotic effort to literally mine new coins in order to trade with them has the potential for undermining currencies, for undermining the role of the dollar as the reserve currency, for destabilizing nations, perhaps starting with small ones, but going much larger. So when we think about this new environment in which we find ourselves that we've been discussing for the last some minutes, we can't just think about nation states.
But this idea that great men are irreplaceable and that as the commons, we cannot do this ourselves. We have to go to these intermediaries. This is the most unfree and enslaved thinking that is out there, right? There is not authoritarianism because people are cowering before some great, dictator who just wants to rule the world. It happens because the commons are thinking so poorly of themselves that they think that they need these intermediaries.
Prices have gone up.
Wow!
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. Oh, wrong one. Lost my soundboard skills over the past week. Skeef, how you doing today?
What's happening?
And Bud Tugley is joining us for the first time. Good to have you on.
That's right.
What are you guys up to tonight?
Just coming to you from the land of LARPing on Liberty, Texas, USA.
Nice. Poor Texas.
It's okay. They'll get good gun laws someday, maybe. I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know. Gun laws are trending in the right direction. I'll say
overall, that. Yes, definitely.
Not where they need to be. They won't let us buy miniguns or Hellfire missiles yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah. If you can fog a mirror, you can buy a tank. That needs to be our gun laws.
Yes, I agree. Totally. But yeah, so Skeef, you just had a trip down to El Salvador. How was that?
Had a very good time overall. It was fun. Went out for adopting Bitcoin, went to the Kaiser event. That was super fun. And had a good time.
Nice. Yeah, I titled this White Savior Complex in El Salvador. It seemed like you were chatting with us about that a little bit in the Toxic Airwaves.
More Western than white. Western's the main thing. Like this whole idea that we have so much to teach these, poor, impoverished people in a Central American country. And it's like, no, that's I don't know.
It's the opposite.
It's the exact opposite. And I go back to the CIA's history. That's what it's just like, how many of these people's leaders have been killed by tax dollars that people here paid. Like how many people, you know, popular leaders, like all, it's just random people that, you know, all they did was oppose a U.S. corporation or something like that. The CIA came in and whacked them. And Bud Tugley spent a lot more time down there than I have, for sure. So
In El Salvador?
just that area.
That area.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I just saw one of the things we were talking about in the Telegram chat was this week was I just saw, first of all, everywhere I went, every single place I went to, I just asked, you know, do you want cash or Bitcoin? You know, and I literally didn't have a single person request Bitcoin the entire week, not one. The only really, and it's just like, no, first, it's not even, I don't know if it's it was just in my, I don't know, which I kind of expected that to some extent. But it was just like, I did find I encounter a lot of people, or not a lot, but I definitely encountered places that were like actively opposed. You know, like a very common thing is people would say, oh, it's broken. Like the computer's broken, you know, because they don't want to mess with Bitcoin, which is all totally legit. Like, you know, like the remittance use case is very, very obvious. That makes a ton of sense to me. The day-to-day spending use case, I don't know. I'm still very skeptical as to whether or not that's there, or will be there anytime soon, but we'll see. And not just El Salvador, but anywhere.
You have to think about the scale. It's going to take forever for people hate two things: change and the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be mad no matter what.
Yeah.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And it's like, I saw a lot of, you know, and I say Western because I saw, you know, people from Europe all over the place. But just like, I literally saw people get upset at places for not accepting Bitcoin. And I was like, the whole fucking point of this entire thing is that it's voluntary. What is going on? Like, it was really, some of it was very upsetting because for me, you know, I'm a non-aggression principle anarchist to the core, you know, freedom of conscience, freedom of all that stuff. It's incredibly important. You know, somebody should be able to use aluminum cans for money if that's what they want to use. Like that's the whole point of this, is that I choose, you know, what I want to use for money, and it's Bitcoin for me. And everybody gets to make that choice and live their life with as much freedom as they possibly can. And so like seeing, and granted, it was people I'd never met before, so I didn't know that much about them, but just seeing quote unquote Bitcoiners like occasionally get upset at a place for not accepting Bitcoin, that really made me very angry. I wanted to slap some people. And
where were you? Were you in El Zante or were you somewhere else?
Both San Salvador and then El Zante.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I saw some tweets about the Chiva wallet being a total POS and not working.
Yeah, that I don't know a lot about it, but I've definitely heard that as well. And that there's definitely been some user experience issues for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that like the voluntarist standpoint is really, really important. And it's, you know, as I've gotten down the rabbit hole on anarchism more and more, I've cared less and less about how other people behave. And, you know, one of the things that we're facing right now is our communities are getting completely destroyed. And, you know, just the audacity of somebody to go to somebody else's country when your country is a complete disaster and be like, you guys should behave this way or do this thing, or it's just absolutely absurd. So,
well, and especially to a bunch of people who are trying to survive.
Yep.
You know, it's like, these are not Californian Silicon Valley elites with more money than God. You know, they're people that are trying to sell some tacos to make a living and feed their kids. And it's like,
but I promise you, they're far more happy, far more fulfilled, and have a whole lot more going for them than 98% of Americans and such too. I think that's a good thing to remember.
Yeah. That's probably because none of them have ever sat in a log scale Twitter spaces.
Zorn, to answer your question, this is Bud Tugley. He's a buddy of mine that spent a lot of time in Central America. So we brought him on as a special guest this week to talk a little bit more about El Salvador and stuff like that.
Where all have you been down there, bud?
I've been Honduras, Nicaragua, been across the border into El Salvador as well down that way. But this is all this is pre-Bitcoin. This is my knowledge of Bitcoin and pre-Bitcoin. But yeah, it's a really neat area for sure. I think one of my favorite stories is some folks had a chainsaw given to them, and they were in the middle of nowhere, and they were able to build complete houses, all kinds of stuff, sawmill, everything, with just a chainsaw. So I think it's a really good picture of what Bitcoin can do. Now, initially, they couldn't figure out how to, the chainsaw and do all that stuff and maintain and do all that. But with some time and some training and different things and some new knowledge, I think that's in my opinion, a good comparison for Bitcoin of how, and I am not the most knowledgeable person about Bitcoin and the things, but I think from just a simple view of it, I think the better ideas will always win out. It may not be immediate, but it will work out better in the end.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
And another cool experience we had recently, last night, we had dinner with a bunch of people from Cuba, or a family from Cuba, and just basically spent the whole evening hearing them tell stories and talk. I mean, they just moved here in the last few years. So the parents especially, their kids were off playing with my kids, just having a good time the whole night. My kids are usually asleep at 7:30. We were up till almost 10 o'clock, just kind of hanging out, talking and everything. And just hearing, so the guy, he was a pastor in Havana, Cuba, and just had so many stories. Like there was one, he told us the story of the day or the week that Castro died, Fidel died. They had all of Havana locked down, all this stuff. And he was telling us about how, so he runs this church. There's like 2,000 people that go to this church down there in Havana. And so they lock down everything. There's soldiers everywhere, machine gun, way more than usual. Everything's just totally locked down. And this guy, he walks up to the guard who's like in charge down there on a Saturday morning. He says, "Hey, just so you know, our church is right over there. That's where we meet. We got about 2,000 Christians who are coming through here tomorrow morning. Just please be nice to them. They're not going to cause you any trouble. Just be nice, whatever." And the guy was like super upset, super angry. He was like, "That cannot happen. We have this going on like this." He's just like chewing the guy out. He's like, "That will not happen." He's like telling him all these reasons that's not going to happen. And the guy's response to this soldier commander's face was, "Oh, I wasn't asking you permission. I was telling you what is going to happen tomorrow morning. And I'm giving you an opportunity for that to go well for you," was like basically what he said to this guy, in Cuba, and, straight under the communist dictator. And, and that guy, and then he walked away, went back to his church, and, he's super polite the entire time, went back to the church. And then that guy's commander came over and he was all, shaking hands. "Appears we had a misunderstanding, blah, 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 blah. They'll come through. It'll be no problem, whatever." And it was just, I don't know. I love hearing about people that are extremely strong. And it's like, I love learning, it was just so cool to hear that story and then hear a whole bunch of others. And then, known a good bit about this guy's background and things like that. And like knowing, I don't know. It was just like, to me, it was a really, really cool story. And it was like to go to somebody like that and start preaching to them about how they need to use Bitcoin and how, you need to do this. And, I'm a software developer from the US. So therefore, blah, it's just retarded, absolutely retarded. It's like the only thing I have to contribute is to hear some stories, comment a little, like, discuss things that are interesting or whatever. And I just don't know. And that paired with kind of being in El Salvador the week before was was just interesting because I just saw, like I was telling you in Telegram, like there were several times that week that it was the first time in my life I'd ever been ashamed to be around Bitcoiners, to be honest. And which is not something that I'm used to. Like I'm accustomed to when I'm around Bitcoiners, that's my people. That's the tribe and then granted it wasn't anybody that I had met before. So it wasn't, like everybody that I knew from before was awesome and, all that was great. But I don't know. It was just a very odd, unexpected experience. But overall, the week was pretty great. It was super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And there's been a lot of controversy over the El Salvadorian government coming out and mandating through legal tender laws that people need to use Bitcoin. And that's been something that, has been very controversial on Bitcoin Twitter, discussing, is it good? Is it bad? But, at the end of the day, when people adopt Bitcoin themselves because they understand it and are interested in it for what it is, and they go down the rabbit hole of what is, hard money, what is Austrian economics, what is, why is Bitcoin different than shitcoin A or B or C or whichever one. That's a pretty powerful, moment for them. And that's completely different than, being mandated in order to do so. And it's going to, because like when it comes down to, at the end of the day, there's 1 million open source wallets out there that people can use down there. And if people, kind of get lost in the weeds, just using the Chivo wallet or whatever, it sets them up for, vulnerable position where they're relying entirely on the state, using this better money, and, they can be taken advantage of. They can be, surveilled. Like, this is something that's really interesting, and kind of wondering is like, we have to, I think when we look at Bitcoin, we look at digital assets, there's a vulnerability to be surveilled and to give more information to, whichever entity, if used incorrectly. And it doesn't mean that Bitcoin is necessarily like, fits into that, but like the Chivo wallet is, yeah, Don agrees with me. Chiva is a surveillance tool.
Yeah.
You have this whole country that was operating predominantly on cash, which is very hard to track and very hard to surveil. And then all of a sudden they bring Bitcoin in as legal tender using their government wallet and Lightning, which has, some issues with privacy. And, that's something that, I was thinking about this past week, is just, that sounds, pretty concerning, where, how do you surveil a population while you mandate them to use a digital currency, and most of them opt into using the government wallet. And then you see, some of the other stuff that Bukele is doing with the vax, which is concerning. And we know that none of this is about getting people vaccinated. It's not about public health. It's about ushering in a whole nother level of surveillance and social credit. And it's I think we've talked about this on the feature, like, how Bitcoin could potentially be used for bad. And I think this is one of those potential cases, but yeah.
And I think it's a classic case, like the Chivo wallet specifically, like the upside of the whole thing is that people can use all of those, they can use Blue Wallet, they can use whatever, they could run their own Lightning node and do everything through that. So that's obviously fantastic. But it's like, it's a very, very classic status playbook, like these kind of entities, it's like they know the vast majority of people are going to take the default, easiest, cheapest path with zero regard to privacy. It just is what it is. It's not, that doesn't make them good or bad. It's a totally neutral observation, just like trees have leaves. Most people are going to take the default path. And I mean, they know that. They're reasonably intelligent at designing these kinds of things. And so they know they can, if they're successful, you're talking about the cash economy, they will move a lot of people from running their entire life on cash, more or less anonymous, to a very easily traced government surveillance wallet that tracks each transaction in and out and has the capacity to log all of it. And it's, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, it was like one thing we were talking about before we hit record is like, I just think the story in Nigeria is 100 million times more interesting and powerful than the story in El Salvador.
Yeah.
Because, the adoption is absolutely exploding. The percent of the economy that's in Bitcoin is totally exploding, and it's literally illegal in the state. Like that's the Nigerian story. That's what should be at the forefront of success stories. Is here's where Bitcoin's illegal. Here's where people can go to jail for using it, and they're still using it like crazy, and a significant portion of the economy runs on it. Why? Why is that?
And I think the point is that people have been given the tools.
Yeah.
And once they're given the tools and once they get those options, they jump in and they understand it. But it's a meritocracy, or it's a merit thing. The best ideas are going to win out, and there's not any real pressure for privacy. There's not a lot of pressure or force for the privacy in El Salvador like there is in Nigeria. And so there's going to be, the people are just going to, like in America, we just kind of follow along and go with whatever's easiest, the Michael Malice thing. They don't really want to be free. They just want to be secure, and they're focused on that. And so, but the thing that I think we have to remember too is that when the privacy things become a huge issue, like they will be in El Salvador, you have a dictator there. And so the people will have the tools that they've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you'll see growth of those tools, in my opinion.
Yeah. And 12 on YouTube said, I don't buy the evil Bukali angle. I don't think he's evil. I'm virtually certain he's an overwhelmingly net positive. But it's important, I think, to look at the whole picture and to realize he is a politician at the end of the day. He is a giant statist at the end of the day, or he wouldn't be where he is. He is somebody who is trying to build a powerful state that will secure power, and hopefully he'll use that to make people's lives better in the country that he runs. I think there's an extremely good chance that will end up being the outcome, when everything's said and done. But yeah, I think my core thing is just that whole thing about the Nigerian story being way more interesting to me than the El Salvador story. Like when Bitcoin succeeds in spite of without state permission, and where it's explicitly illegal, that's the power of Bitcoin. The state's only role in Bitcoin, as far as I'm concerned, is to get out of people's way as much as possible. I don't like the idea of mandating legal tender, but that part also doesn't really matter as much because it's not enforced at all whatsoever. I think for basically everyone, their life is probably identical to what it was 6 or 8 months ago before the legal tender law, whenever that was.
Yeah. I think it's important. It's important too to not whitewash Bukali and different people just because he's done one thing that you like. It's just like in America, we don't say anything. I mean, the Republicans or Democrats may do one thing that I like, but that doesn't make Kamala Harris or Donald Trump the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Ted Cruz said nice things about Bitcoin mining, and he's directly complicit in murdering children overseas. Both of those things can be true. Yeah. And are.
Yeah. No, I agree. I wouldn't say that Bukele is necessarily evil. And I think a lot of these politicians aren't necessarily evil, even though they do evil things. I think a lot of people get lost and confused and what's actually helpful for humanity. And I don't think that government really is. And there's a pretty good case to make for that because of all the people that have been murdered over the past you know, 150 years specifically. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like there's the political sphere that like we see Kamala Harris, we see Hillary Clinton, we see, you know, BKLA, but then there's all the other stuff happening behind the scenes of the people really pulling the strings and pushing through these decisions. And I think we saw a clear example of this, or we were watching a clear example of this with the vax mandates right now. You know, they're trying to push them through in lockstep, unanimous, or like all together simultaneously, all these countries around the world to different degrees. In the US, that push is kind of failing politically because there's some pushback, but I don't think that push was ever going to come in the first place. It was going to come from the corporations mandating it to be able to work. And those are like the type of forces that I'm talking about. And so at the end of the day, Bukele, you know, if he wants to be in this position of power and remain in every politician, you know, the currency that they value most is attention and political control. Like they're not all simultaneously after money. Though Nancy Pelosi is really good at getting money as well, but
hedge fund manager in the business.
Yeah, but yeah, in order for him to be able to do that, like he's going to have to, you know, push through these different ideas, and I just think like upgrading an entire country from cash to Bitcoin using this centralized wallet service is, you know, a great way to surveil people and kind of in step with what they're trying to do everywhere else. And so that's kind of my thinking.
Yeah.
Banality of evil.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The evil is actually bigger than people. It's in the ideology. Nobody can wield the ring of power. Exactly. Yeah. Solid. Yeah, and I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, is like, you know, the attitude that I'm trying to have more and more so is get my own house in order, which it's not in order yet. And, you know, the people directly surrounding me. I mean, the attitude, like I started out on, you know, when I started podcasting and started the meetup, was like I wanted to convince everybody in Tucson that Bitcoin is important. And I realized how dumb that is pretty early on, because I don't think that's, you know, really beneficial versus, you know, what Svetsky talks a lot about is this idea of selective adoption, of getting Bitcoin into the hands of the right people, and, you know, the ones that are, you know, really going to be powerful and use it well, and the rest of everybody else will come along. And it's not like necessarily neglecting or trying to avoid, but, you know, it's like if somebody's not interested, I'm not going to put a whole lot of energy into trying to give them the most powerful freedom technology, you know, we've ever seen. I'm going to go to the ANCAP that is actually practicing agorism and try and help him to see that, you know, Bitcoin's an extension and will empower him even more in his activities. So, yeah.
It's just showing people when, like, I have a lot of friends that are angry about the government. They don't like how spending, all that stuff. And it's just like, hey, here's a quick idea, rather than trying to beat them over the head. Because it's just, I mean, I think it's just the best ideas are always going to win out. And it's going to take time. It's not going to be exactly as we plan, and it's not going to be perfect. You know, people are going to fight, and they're going to mess up, and they're going to, El Salvador's not perfect. It's not perfectly private, but, you know, the tools exist and the people will get there, I think, with time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's always about having confidence in the individual. And this is like where I think a lot of different ideologies kind of clash, especially between statism and anarchism, liberty, is this idea of like having so little faith in the individual versus having massive faith in the individual. And I think we're all taking the perspective of having, you know, massive faith. Like people are going to make decisions that benefit them, and as far as like the best idea winning out, fiat currencies are very obviously not the best idea. They're probably one of the worst ideas ever conceived for money, besides, well, you wouldn't call Ethereum money, but but yeah.
Broken science fair project.
Yeah. So I think that's something to be, incredibly hopeful in, is this idea of like decentralization. And markets are a really powerful force, and the state is just trying to, swim upstream in regards to trying to corral all of us. And it's a very difficult process that, they will ultimately fail. Hopefully it doesn't take another 100 years for that to fall apart and they get what they want in our lifetimes. But yeah.
And something we keep talking about is just how, at the end of the day, how incompetent and impotent they really are. I mean, it's like they really have one set of tools, and it's this like overarching control, beat people with vax mandates. They can print money and give it to their friends. Like they have a very, very limited and well-defined tool set. And we are fully aware of what that tool set is and how they use it. They've been doing the same playbook for a very long time. And I mean, we, on our side, we have time on our side. Like I definitely think this is the super cycle. I think Jimbo's probably right about 10 million by next halving. Like I think things are going to get super, super wild over the next couple of years. But, because I don't trade, because I don't use leverage, I could be totally wrong about that. It could take 10 years and that would be totally fine. I'm just, I'm here for, the mission of promoting human flourishing. And I want to see as much of that as possible. And my interest in Bitcoin is that it seems to be, everything I'm seeing tells me it's by far the most important tool to achieve that goal. And so that's the value of Bitcoin. And I don't know. I think a lot of people look at Bitcoin as the end in and of itself. And I think to me, the end has to be human flourishing at the most significant scale we can possibly achieve. And, nobody knows what that's going to look like. Like all we can do is play some just absolutely tiny microscopic role in that whole trend developing, hopefully.
Yeah, that's great. I think this revolution needs to be localized and decentralized for it to really, be successful. And this is something like a lot of people talk about things like mass adoption, what do we need to do to get to mass adoption? It's like, well, why don't you go around to your local community and see where problems are and try and fix them? Like this is something that we have to like, yeah. I mean, as far as like, we're going to see, like, how do you get to a place like Nigeria? How do we get that in the United States? Because we have a pretty tyrannical system and a lot of people are really waking up into it. I'm shooting this inflation documentary right now and I'm going around talking with people about how bad it is. And I tell them things like, did you know that the published inflation rate was 5%? Like, do you believe that? Is that what you're experiencing at the gas pump, at the grocery store, with housing prices? They're like, fuck no, it's way worse than that. And I think, those are like we have these opportunities right here and right now. And I think there's this like disconnect of people wanting to sit around their butts and just, kind of watch the revolution happen. It's like, no, it's time. It's boots on the ground. We need to roll, and what we're watching as a result of it is it's like a Noah's Ark situation, where everything is completely collapsing. All the wealth is getting completely sucked into the hands of the parasitic elite. And, we have an opportunity to stop it. And sure, a lot of people are going to want to drown before they do anything different. But, it's like getting out there and finding the people and, doing these things like creating, these little mini citadels or networks of people working together to ensure that you can have Thanksgiving next year when they try and clamp down on the meat production and all the bullshit like that. But
we're doing steak on Thursday to I didn't think turkey had enough CO2 emissions. Wanted to have some more, so we're gonna do steak instead. But I think that I don't know. It's going to be, I guess I'm just really excited to watch this whole trend develop. And I think that's like, there's a lot of reasons, that Isaiah's job essay that we've talked about a lot, that I think there's a lot of reasons that resonates with so many people in Bitcoin. But like the core idea, the reason it's called Isaiah's job, and I'm sure lots of people have read it, but it's just, this idea that Isaiah's job was to preach to everyone, but not water down the message at all. And so that's like the point the guy, Albert or Alfred, whatever, Jay Knock is making in that essay, as he talks about, he's bringing the message to absolutely everyone, but it's a message that only the remnant will receive. It's a message that only a very small minority will receive. And to me, that's just such a powerful idea, because Bitcoin has been out in the open from day one. I mean, Bitcoin was almost a decade old by the time I even found it, in a meaningful way. And, it's just been totally out there in the open, completely, free software the whole time. And it's been available to everyone and accessible by basically everyone with internet and a little bit of hardware. But it's, I've met the people who found Bitcoin. I've met some people that found Bitcoin in 2011, 2012 and got it and got some and held on to most of it. That's an extremely special kind of human. Every time I meet one of those people, I'm like, this is a very special human. Not to just be around at that time, but to understand it in a meaningful way and hold on to it is, in my opinion, very, very impressive. That's a very special human. And that's same thing in 10 years, people are going to look back and say, oh, you found it in 2015, 2016, 17, whatever. Like that's, we get less and less special as things go along, and that's totally fine. But
you were never special. Let's be honest.
My mother says I am, so
she doesn't even like you that much.
And so, but it is, it's like that idea of there's a very, very small subset who will ever, just by math, there's a very, very small subset of people who will ever use Bitcoin, defined as holding private keys. Like the max UTXOs, as we've talked about, is maybe a few 100 million. It's definitely not a billion. And it could easily be under 100 million. And so you're talking about, it's very realistic that the number of people in the entire globe that will ever hold private keys is in the tens of millions. It could be as high as hundreds of millions, but it's definitely not. The math doesn't work for it to be any higher than that. And it's like, okay, well, we think Bitcoin's going to change the world, and a tiny, tiny minority will ever hold private keys. How do you square those two? You square those two by Bitcoin, being adopted and used by a very small minority, and that minority is who determines the course of history and who determines the direction that countries go, and who builds the products that all these people will use, because they'll have all kinds of financial products. They'll have Lightning, they'll have all this fun stuff that Carvalho's working on. There's lots of amazing things that they'll use. Well, his isn't a good example because his is real self-custody focused, but it's just a lot of people will benefit from Bitcoin by society changing under their feet, not by holding private keys. And I think that's pretty interesting. And that upsets a lot of people, and those people can go yell at math as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they can go yell at the white paper. They can frame one up on their wall and just go yell at it.
They can go use BSV, where 1 billion people can hold private keys and store YouTube videos on the blockchain and whatever else they do over there.
I haven't heard of BSV for a very long time. I wonder what's going on with that project.
Some BSV retard hosted a Spaces recently, and Alice Lacrosse was on there, and they booted him from the Spaces because he pointed out that there was investment during the sound money era of mid to late 1800s, early 1900s. Because they were saying, their basic point, as I understand it, was Bitcoin will never work because you need inflation to stimulate investment. So anything without enough inflation won't stimulate investment. And so he jumped on and said, there was sound money for a very long time in this time period. There was also lots of investment during that time period. What do you do with that? and they said, "We don't need any conspiracy theorists around here," was their exact quote, and they booted him from the stage. He was just like, "Oh, all right, well, go fuck yourself."
So
go read The Economist.
So are you saying that BSV lifted the hard cap?
Oh no, BSV. I don't know. It's been so long since I even looked into it, but my understanding is they have virtually unlimited block space, and so there aren't any like quote unquote technical limitations to, like they could theoretically get as many base layer transactions through as possible, just with the minor caveat that nobody with an IQ above 12 would ever mine BSV or invest in hardware for that ecosystem.
Yeah, I don't know. Like BSV, unless they change their hashing algorithm, I don't even think it's listed for SHA-256 miners.
Yeah.
And I'd be surprised if they change their hashing algorithm, because that'd be kind of silly. But yeah. Now, this is an interesting point from 12 and something like I think about a lot, from looking at things like SegWit and Taproots. 12 says, seems like tech advancement could scale the main chain at some point, even though it's not in the obvious future. And I think that's totally a possibility, but I think that doesn't mean that your argument that very few people are going to hold UTXOs isn't also true. But,
well, the highest reasonable number I've seen today, is somewhere in the, according to Don Reddy, Lurk runs BSV miners. And I heard from a very reliable source in YouTube comments that Lurk runs BSV miners. So I definitely think that's a rumor that we need to get going. But Don says, well, no, now we can't trust YouTube comments anymore because Don is saying that I have a poster of Craig right next to my bed. It's actually in my bathroom by the shower. It's not in my bed, but I forgot what I was talking about before. Oh, the tech oh god. the tech advancement though, it's like, like the estimates that I read today is that there's a capacity for somewhere in the ballpark of 80 million UTXOs, and somewhere 80, maybe 100 million if you go to the top end. And it's, there's all, whatever future SegWit is. I mean, there's all these, there's definitely going to be lots more optimizations and things like that. And the basic argument is, you could maybe get it to, or you could probably get it to hundreds of millions. And again, that's UTXOs. Like how many UTXOs does an individual own? Could be thousands, could be tens of thousands, could be 100,000. And it's not even 80 million individuals. It's 80 million UTXOs. And that kind of stuff, there's no, and so, it'll be interesting to see what technology advancements look like over the next, say, 75 years or something like that. But there's very, very real mathematical limits. Like that top end is for sure not a billion, for sure. We can be virtually certain of that. How close, how far into the hundreds of millions does it go? It'll be interesting to see. But that's just a factor of like dust limits and things like that. Like it's numbers, it's not opinions.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And these are probably not comparable, but IPv4, which is pretty much what we all use right now, is very limited in the amount of IP addresses that can be out there, and there's been some tricks to keep it working. It'll probably take 100 years to upgrade to IPv6.
And to me, it's a fact of human nature that most people just don't care about their own sovereignty.
Yeah.
And again, that's not positive or negative. It's just an observation. And like one easy example that I use is, our state of Arizona, literally anyone can walk into a store with $150 and walk out with a handgun 20 minutes later and carry it with them at all times and have the, one of the most effective self-sovereignty, self-defense pieces of technology that there is on planet. You talk about bang for your buck. Like I don't think you're going to get a better bang for your buck than conceal carry. Yet almost nobody does it. why is that? Most they clearly don't see value. It's not a priority for them, which is totally fine. Everybody's free to evaluate everything for themselves. But it's to me, it's a very, very clear example of how few people are willing to invest very, very basic things in their own sovereignty and in their own self-sufficiency. So you asked, what can you mine BSV with?
I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I'll figure this out tomorrow.
I'm assuming there's a lot of Calvin Ayres media content on the BSV blockchain, if you know what I mean, without me getting us kicked off YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Now I'm pretty sure BSV has a single mining pool dedicated to processing blocks. I don't think there's really any hash rate on it whatsoever, but it I don't know. Sometimes I like to get down the weeds on these shit coins a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. We haven't talked about Ethereum for a while.
Those tofu boys. That video from back in the day resurfaced again of Vitalik and Joe Lubin, and I legitimately didn't know who the third guy was. I think everybody thought I was joking, but I tweeted out the video and I just said, "Who's the block of tofu with scoliosis on the right?" Because I legitimately didn't know who it was, but nobody answered. Everyone just laughed, so I still don't know who it is.
I guarantee
just whoever that conference interviewer was at the, at some shitcoin whatever conference they were at.
Well, I can guarantee you that buying Ethereum and being in that ecosystem definitely gives you immunity from climate change. So if you don't want to get diagnosed with climate change and have to go through the tofu protocol to get better and set up a Greta Thunberg shrine in your yard somewhere, buy some Ethereum.
Tucson started a very dangerous rumor a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't able to join, and he said it's because I was diagnosed with climate change. And the reason I'm back today is because I did what I'm supposed to do. I ate a whole bunch of tofu. I grew my soy tits, and I was able to thankfully beat climate change. It was a rough go, but I had my Greta shrine all set up. I prayed to Al Gore 3 times a day, and by the grace of that little autistic girl, I came through, pulled through.
Yeah. Another way to be immune from climate change is to get into political office and fly on private jets everywhere you go.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, what's interesting about Ethereum, I think we all know that they're never going to upgrade to 2.0. That's just never going to happen. They've been talking about it. There was kind of a push towards it at the beginning of the year, that they were actually going to do it. But, ETH mining rigs are selling for a premium right now, which I think is kind of telling.
Nobody believes they're gonna move. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is a narrative I hear once in a while. So 12 says it's easy to make fun of Ethereum, but there's a very real chance it makes a serious run at Bitcoin's market cap. At least that wouldn't scare me though. But boy, the drama potential is there, and that's an interesting point. And I think it's something that, to consider seriously, because the people that have a vested interest in fighting Bitcoin know that Ethereum's a shit coin, like the Hillary Clintons of the world, and they still have money printers that they can use to direct at assets like ETH. So there is a potential for, as well as all the quintillionaires out there like Paul Krugman and Larry Fink and whoever else. So it's an interesting,
and that's why proper unit of account is so important. Let's say Ethereum goes on a run and outperforms Bitcoin for a year or even 2 years or something like that in dollars. I guess I go back to the unit of account, and it's for me, I really don't think Bitcoin actually became my unit of account until like early 2020, honestly, because it was still, I was all, and it was, I had liquidated 401k for Bitcoin, I'd done all that stuff. I held minimal investments outside of, Bitcoin or whatever. And it's still, I think I still had $1 a unit of account until 2020 hit. And that, everybody that knows me can tell you, I didn't really shill Bitcoin a whole lot before 2020. Like my Bitcoin shill was, it's freedom technology. It's a good investment. It's probably going to do well. You should buy some, learn about it, read the Bitcoin Standard. It's a good book, blah, 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 blah. And then in 2020, my Bitcoin pitch shifted to, this is the one single fork in the road between Chinese style authoritarianism and a free society. And the degree to which you prosper and thrive in life is directly related to when and how you adopt Bitcoin. And I'm not arguing with you. We have nothing to argue about. I'm telling you about the tsunami of change that's coming. And I desperately hope that you take some time to consider it and to figure out how you can adopt that in your life. But if somebody wants to argue, I tell them to have a nice day. I don't have energy for that. I don't care. Like, if you want to be stupid, that's nothing I can do about that. Like Weinicke says, tell them to stay dumb.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think a lot of people are waking up to that. I think once we start seeing, that's funny. Zorn says, run an ETH full node. I dare you. Don thinks there's no shot that ETH makes a run at Bitcoin's market cap. Or Sarah says, ain't no one got enough money for that, Zorn. Skeef spins fire. Yeah. Yeah. So 12 says, yeah.
I would agree the chances of ETH making a good run are extremely small.
Yeah.
About as close to zero as you can get. But it's like, if it does happen, that's all the more reason for us to have a proper unit of account, which is Bitcoin. If the number of sats that I have this month is more than last month, I'm winning, period. That's the scoreboard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sats in cold storage, not leveraged on all this, bullshit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So 12 points out. We'll see if Bitcoin is the Austrians' big chance to prove their theories. And, this theory has already been proven with gold and silver. So we know how this plays out. And in this case, Bitcoin is, the equivalent to gold in that scenario. And Ethereum's the equivalent of like copper. They're not even comparable in the slightest. But yeah. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. We live in a world just so detached from reality. So I think in the short term, there's a possibility of something like that happening. It's probably low, but yeah. Did you guys catch Alex Gladstein versus Udi in a debate today hosted by Logscale?
I saw that. I saw somebody tweeted that, and I commented that I would rather bang my face on a wall than listen to Udi talk more about that. Like, the guy is such a spineless rat with no valid perspective whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But it would be, if anybody can talk to him about it, it would be Gladstein. He would be good at that.
Yeah. I have the same reaction. I popped in for about 5 minutes. I'm amazed that anybody would take the time to debate Udi at this point.
Yeah.
Don says Udi's a dishonest prick.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. His whole perspective on trying to be nice to people, I definitely am trying to take a similar approach to you in explaining Bitcoin, of just going on some anarchist tirade. And I think this is probably really good opportunity for us right now to promote these ideas, because the truth is just so obvious, and how destructive these policies are. Like, a lot of people are really upset and waking up, And I think once they're able to connect the dots to social credit and vax mandates, and then how CBDCs are going to be tied into that, Bitcoin's going to become, a no-brainer. They're not going to be interested in Ethereum in the slightest of like, how do I get more surveillance coin? And that's not going to, be, this isn't going to be, apparent to 70% of the population that doesn't care, and to the type of people that are like, I don't care about privacy because I have nothing to hide. Like those types of people aren't going to benefit from it or even care. But, there's probably going to be 25 to 30% of the population, a lot larger than, the small 5% that's actually doing anything right now, that are going to be pretty upset and concerned about that and, take some meaningful action in that regard.
I think Udi, at the end of the day, I think Udi's the absolute definition of, I forget what movie it's from, but that scene where there's two guys talking and one of them says, I think you're bad. I think you're, so all these mean things about him. And the other guy says, I don't think about you. And it's like, to me, that's like a perfect summary of my thoughts on Udi. Like he says all these things about who's mean or who's upset or who hurt his feelings and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's like he's like a kid throwing a tantrum and he's talking about, who hurt it, all that stuff, who hurt his feelings. And most Bitcoiners, the response is, I don't think about you. Like I've had you muted for a couple of years. Like, why are you still talking? And so it's like, I've had him muted for a long time. And so, it's from Mad Men. Thank you, Brian, in the chat. The show, so it's from the show Mad Men, and I'm sure I butchered that quote. So somebody feel free to correct that in the chat, definitely. But it's just like that idea of it's like, we're focused on building real things in the real world, and like
I got jobs to create.
Yeah, it's shit to do.
I got a business to run.
Yeah,
I got a family.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. No, it's solid. Yeah. Shitcoiners have a very different perspective. I mean, it's kind of amazing to have watched how many people have quit their jobs to go and trade on these DeFi platforms. Like that's an actual trend that's happening right now.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people that bet on Dogecoin, made a little bit of cash, and went and quit their jobs.
Yeah. Or they'll do what's called wrapped Bitcoin, which is basically putting Bitcoin on Ethereum, and then they put it into all this, compound finance, all that. Oh, you'll get 300% APY per year, chasing yield, blah, 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 blah. And it's all, I mean, there was, so Alan Farrington, and then I forget who he wrote it with, but if you have the time, find that they wrote like a 50-pager on just absolutely decimating the idea of utility tokens, totally deconstructing the entire DeFi landscape on Ethereum, Solana, all this other bullshit. And I don't know how, I mean, I read through that and was cheering him along the whole way, but I got through that. And I'm like, I don't know how, it literally doesn't fit in my brain how somebody could read this and still put a single dollar into DeFi. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But,
no, I know a guy that lost half of his life savings in DeFi.
Yeah.
DeFi hack. $90,000. He calls me. It's like, hey man, I lost it. Like, how do I get it back? It's like, you don't. That's not how this works. You don't magically get your money back, and you can't hire a hacker. You could try and call the FBI, but they're not going to be able to do anything for you.
You take what's left and you convert it to Bitcoin, and you deliver pizzas and drive Uber to buy more Bitcoin.
Yep. That's
it.
That's exactly the case. But okay. So wrapped Bitcoin's even worse than what you described it. So the way that wrapped Bitcoin works is you give Bitcoin to a bank, and then they somehow put it on Ethereum. So it's not that it's like somehow locked in some sort of decentralized protocol. It's given to a financial institution to be held. So that's, in my opinion, even worse.
Yeah.
which is hilarious.
Wanted to get away from them.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the whole. First of all, the people who are technically competent are not working on this stuff.
Yeah.
That's something that I think Jimmy Song does a really, really good job of making the point of. Because I forget where this was, some interview or something, but somebody said, I mean, we all know Vitalik is smart, and then they started making a point, and Jimmy Song just cut him off, and he said, no, we don't all know that. He is not smart. Like these are script kiddies who know how to fill out JavaScript forms that are working on this stuff. These are not competent computer scientists and software engineers and things like that. These are not the people, the people building this stuff. Like their alternative is to be like a junior to mid-level developer, maybe at like Coca-Cola or something. Like these are largely, for the most part, they're not elite Facebook, Google engineers working on this stuff. They are, low-level morons who are slightly more technically competent than other people and just don't have the chops to build this kind of stuff. And so, every time you see, Compound lost this much money, this protocol lost this much money. Yeah, it's because the people working on it are horribly incompetent and don't have a very strong grasp of what they're doing. And then on top of that, what they're doing is extremely retarded anyway. And so it's not, and that's what people are. I talked to somebody just in the last couple of months who lost an entire Bitcoin trying to play these stupid DeFi games because he was trying to put it into, I don't even know what protocol it was. He's trying to put it in, and basically the way it works, because it's decentralized, you need 3 servers from all around the world that need to, do this handoff because there can't be some centralized thing. So they've got to make it decentralized. Well, one of those servers fucked up and he lost an entire Bitcoin, like just recently, playing these stupid fucking games. And I told him, I was like, and he's still doing it. He's like, oh, it's, it comes with the territory. I like innovation, but all this nonsense we hear all the time. And I'm just like, oh.
Well, people have to, it's just like the people who got the vaccine or something and are trying to justify it. Like they're the same, like the saying of there's no new ideas. It's just wrapped up in different ways. And, people are still out for greed. That's why all that other stuff still exists. And yeah, they're trying to get other people to go along and to justify and not have to say, hey, I made a huge mistake and I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I got the vaccine because I like innovation.
Yeah. I trust the science.
Yeah, I trust the science. Like these same people. Oh my gosh. But yeah. Or anyways.
Yeah.
I don't want to piss off. I mean, y'all won't piss off.
We hate.
Okay.
No, yeah. No, I tweeted out today, if you took the vaccine, you'll never be in my inner circle because there's a ceiling on how much I can trust you since you failed that test.
Yeah. Brian's asking for thoughts on Taproot.
I don't feel like I'm informed enough to offer anything close to a worthwhile perspective.
Yeah. Well, I've done some more reading into it and listening on it, and I mean, it sounds pretty cool. It's definitely like the biggest benefit is to multi-sig and making it cheaper and more efficient to do, which is pretty exciting. And it's going to open the doors. It's going to be slow going. Ultimately, is like it's going to take a while for wallets to adopt it and utilize it, which is okay. But Max Hildebrand did a really good podcast. There's this guy that I've been he does a podcast called the Vanu podcast, and I think on YouTube it's called Liberty on Under Attack, and they were discussing Taproot in pretty in pretty good detail. If you want to get into that podcast and check it out. 12's getting a Pfizer tat. Oh,
nice.
That reminds me, there's this comedian named Ryan Long. So there's 2 comedians that have been doing a really good job making a mockery of all the COVID hysteria. One is JP Sears.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
The red-haired guy, right?
Yeah, he's fantastic. And the other one's Ryan Long, and Ryan Long was playing a leftist that hates big pharma except for Pfizer. It was pretty funny. Vaccines are soy. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
You know what? I was thinking, the Silk Road. Oh, yeah. 12 stole that from Ryan, so he saw that too. I was thinking that, the Silk Road, thank you to Ross Ulbricht. If you haven't signed the petition to get him free, that's a good thing to do. But what was it? Oh yeah. Not the Pirate Bay. The Silk Road is setting the framework for how people are going to be trading for unvaccinated semen and eggs in the future. So, big thank you to Ross for that. And Dread, yeah, you can get this. Fold sells these.
Oh, nice. Is that from the merch store?
Yeah, it's from the merch store.
Okay. Cool.
I liked Fold before Will went full Zuckerberg with the metaverse.
Yeah, that was a little bit unfortunate because it's been called the metaverse, like Fold's AR experience, for at least 6 or 8 months now, and then Facebook came out and changed their name. But also, metaverse is also a pretty common word though too.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something to take a deeper look into. The timing's a little bit too close. I'll have to have a chat with Will the next time I see him.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
he's a good Arizona Bitcoiner. We'll see him again soon.
Yeah. Yeah, Dread. It's beanie season in Arizona. I'm super happy. I love days where I can wear sweatpants and a beanie all day. Those are my favorite days. And it's much easier for Bitcoin mining when it's cold outside and not 100 degrees. I'll say that.
120.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something I'm like. Have you looked much into immersion mining? Max and I were talking about it last time.
I'm following like Neil building out his.
Okay.
Who else? Coin Heated is building one out. So I've been observing other people building it for a good little while now, but I'm nowhere near close to trying it myself for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I've gone down the rabbit hole pretty hard this week, and we'll probably continue on it. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it's the only reasonable way to mine in Arizona, realistically.
Yeah, it's big. I know what I've read is it's anywhere between 20 and 40% increase to efficiency. So your power bill, which is obviously your only expense on your only variable expense, goes down significantly. And then I know a guy who he bought a like basically turnkey plug and play system. So he just basically had to put it together, and he paid $7,300 for the system, and that holds 15 new gen miners. So he's putting 15 Watts miners in there, and then he had to pay like over $3,000 for shipping. Damn. And so the whole thing was about $10,000 for the system. And so that's a very similar calculation to buying miners, just do I come out ahead if I put that $10,000 into an immersion system that pays me back over years and years? Or do I just buy another miner? Or do I buy Bitcoin with that? And nobody knows what the right answer is to that, because a huge factor is difficulty. And anybody who says they know exactly what difficulty is going to do is completely full of shit.
Yeah, I guess the perspective
I crack up when people have mining spreadsheets. I'm like, okay, like you can get directionally right, but You know, you have no idea what difficult he's going to do.
I guess the perspective I have is more small scale pleb mining,
Mhm.
like fish tank status, because it seems like it's pretty reasonable to do something like that. I mean, you buy a fish tank, a pump, that's probably about $200, and then you buy the bit cool for about $200. So you're only spending $400 in. You can put a couple miners in it potentially, depending on how big your fish tank is. That seems a lot more reasonable.
Yeah. You just want to make sure you do it right, because that S19 that's 12K or whatever they are today is probably going to be 100K before too long. So
Yeah.
Fucking it up is a very expensive mistake.
That's true. That is very true.
Brian Watson said, you guys accept ETH for merch, right?
Of course. Ultrasound money.
Yeah.
The heart. It's so hard that they do token burns. Yeah, I tweeted about the Fed doing a token burn. That'd be hilarious. They like publicly announced, like, hey guys, we're taking $1 trillion out of circulation to try and curb inflation. I thought that'd be super funny. They're never gonna do that though. We got Tyler in Spaces. How you doing, Tyler? Oh. Maybe. Uber ultrasound, yeah. No, the Uber won't come until the next cycle when they, if it survives that long, they'll need another marketing scheme. So they'll add Uber before ultrasound.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Well, anyways, we wanted to keep the show short tonight. I know you're pretty tired, Skeef. Get into our sponsors. You want to share our sponsors for tonight?
Sure, yeah. Our number one sponsor, very, very loyal, who we are eternally grateful for, is Dirtbags Bar in Tucson, Arizona. Easily, without a doubt, the number one place in Southern Arizona to meet your future ex-wife. So next time you're down there, definitely go down. We haven't made up drink specials for them in a while. So I'm going to say for Thanksgiving, they've got Oktoberfest for $3 a pint. So go on in there and get yourself a Sam Adams Oktoberfest, $3 a pint. Tell them Toxic Airwaves sent you. They'll have no idea what you're talking about because they're our fake sponsor. But go ahead and tell them we sent you. And do you want to thank Dennis for helping us with the show?
Lark was on it. Yeah, this show is presented by Dennis Porter, the best Bitcoin podcaster, especially when it comes to creating original content and very original thoughts. But yeah, he's been very kind to help support and keep the show going. He gives us trading tips via screenshots of British Hodl's Glassnode account. So,
and he's in British Hodl's secret Telegram trading group. So that's how we're going to outperform Bitcoin, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Dennis is so nice. Dennis puts out so much content. He puts out his podcast. He puts his name on other people's podcasts, which is just really increases his reach. And we're very thankful for the service that he provides. It's very, very, very beneficial.
He's a marketing genius, absolute genius. And that face he makes on his thumbnails, that's a face of fortitude and determination. Like, he is the king of clout, and he will continue to be the king of clout. So yeah, very kind. It's kind of weird that he doesn't actually let us into British Hodl's secret Telegram group, and that he only sends us screenshots.
It's a very exclusive group. I mean, British talks about, he came in 2020, but his CAGR is somebody who's been here since 2015 because of how good he is at trading mining stocks. So it's very exclusive. It's a very exclusive group. And who knows? Like Dennis, if his wife lets him, he might even buy more Bitcoin. You never know. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah. Wow. What a guy.
What a guy.
Very, very had very, very happy to have his mentorship and support in this. I was trying to come up with another sponsor. Shout out to Hillary Clinton. Shout out to Kamala Harris. All the strong women in positions of power that are being very successful in what they do right now. That was a pretty.
Did we ever get that Hillary Clinton affiliate link finalized? Because I remember we were working on a deal to. Anyway, long story short, every assassin that we refer to Hillary Clinton, we get 10%. So that could be a pretty significant revenue source for us because she hires a lot of assassins. So we'll see what kind of money that brings in for the show.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of money in assassinations, and 12 says Jen Psaki too. We can't forget about her wonderful contribution to the world. Shout out to Mike Alfred. The institutions are going to be announcing soon.
There was a firefighters fund and then some new ATMs. So really knocked it out of the park there.
Apple's going to be announcing. That's how long has that been an ongoing meme?
That guy, I don't know, for all the billionaires that Mike Alfred has lunch with, you'd think he'd have a little bit better information. He's constantly talking about, got coffee with Charles Schwab today or what. Get the fuck out of here.
Is Charles Schwab even alive?
I don't know. Or maybe it was the CEO of Charles Schwab or I forget who. He had lunch or coffee or something with some bigwig at Charles Schwab, and they were on the verge of announcing Bitcoin custody or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. My mom used to work for Morgan Stanley, and I tried to orange pill her in 2019. She went to talk to those guys, and they laughed at her and told her it was stupid. So all those guys can have fun staying poor. I mean, the institutions are security risks, so it's better that they don't buy, and the plebs get it, and the Nigerians get it, and that's what has me bullish. And a million people with $100 are a lot more powerful than these institutions, and I think that's how we win it. So all the like jockeying, fuck them.
Yeah.
But
the tyranny ends when enough individuals accumulate enough economic power. To me, that's the leverage point.
Yep. Totally agree. We have the Christmas party coming up. I'm pretty stoked.
December 9th. I will be out there bringing some guests. Be a good time.
Yeah. I'm stoked for that. I should probably buy my ticket. I'll probably do that tonight. Trying to think if there's anything else I have. Spaces just crashed on me. I guess Spaces is over.
All right, YouTube's the most important part.
Yeah. We'll get banned eventually. So I know we got some crew. If you want to hang out with us and chat throughout the week, DM me or Skeef on Twitter. We'll set you up with the Telegram. That's how we'll keep us alive, and as well as Dennis Porter promoting our stuff on his show. But we'll talk about it next week, Lurk. That's a big topic to get into. We didn't talk. I think Skeef, you might have mentioned it briefly.
I saw the presentation. Learned a little bit more about. I'm preliminarily, I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be pretty interesting, but I definitely want to spend a lot more time digging into it and see what all it is. But
I'll be curious I briefly read over the paper or the announcement, and there were some things I thought were kind of dumb about it and some things I thought were pretty cool. The publishing platform seems pretty cool, but that's something to be bullish on though, is like the amount of innovation that'll happen in the space versus focusing on the price, because dollars are a shitty measurement. So anyways, you got anything else?
I think that's it for me.
Cool. I think that's all I got too.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and have a good one.
Yeah.